Aloha and welcome to today's episode of the Chiefs 9 podcast. I am Command Chief Master Sergeant Sandra Fox, the Hawaii National Guard Command Senior Enlisted Leader.
The State of Hawaii Department of Defense has a brand new podcast out. It's called the Nakoa Exchange, Boots, Wings, and More. You can see the lovely logo behind me. We also have one for the Chiefs 9, which is our first series under that podcast, where the Chief gets to talk about 9 different leadership traits, topics, and discussions with various people. And so we have had some really good shows in the past. We've had Warrior Ethos, Leadership Spectrum, and a lot more. This is, I think, our 6th out of the 9. We have some bonus content. Sometimes we go a little long, so we've split it into 2. They come out about every 2 weeks. So, keep an eye out for those.
Yeah. So our hope is that the units will go out there and listen to these episodes that feature our great airmen and soldiers of the Hawaii National Guard, and hopefully generate some conversations and provide professional development for those people in the units. So we really want to showcase the perspectives, the leadership perspectives of our guests and the things that they have to share, because I think that's what resonates the most with our listeners.
And you can search us out on various platforms. We're on YouTube, YouTube Music, Spotify, and Apple. So a lot of opportunities. The YouTube one, you get to see the video of us here. So you get to see, the whole gamut. And then the YouTube Music is just the audio. So if you can, we have past episodes up on all of the platforms right now.
All right. So today we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, how we manage our own feelings and how we manage other people's feelings and emotions. So I have with me today my co-host, Jeff Hickman, Director of Public Affairs, and I'd like to welcome our 2 guests to discuss today's topic, emotional intelligence, Command Sergeant Major Scott Stimson and Chief Master Sergeant Misty Park. So if you guys can share a little bit about yourselves and your guard story.
Sure. My name is Scott Stimson. I've been in the National Guard ever since I turned 17 years old. Kind of grew up patriotic and wanted to follow in my father's footsteps, continuing with a legacy of military service. And he was the first person that told me about the National Guard and all of the educational and employment opportunities that are out there for young women and men to take advantage of. And so I joined when I was 17 and been serving ever since. Been fortunate to kind of find my passion in life being a change agent. So when I came back from Portugal, serving there as a missionary, my boxing coach and mentor, Sergeant First Class Dan Dunn, brought me in to work with him as a recruiting assistant. So we were out and about in the community, shaking hands, kissing babies, and telling the Guard story, helping young men and women figure out what they want to do with their future and how they can continue to give back to their community and country by putting on the uniform and serving in our ranks. And since then, I've been recruiting now for 20 years. At every single level, been fortunate to change lives and help other people figure out what they want to do. And been a Recruiter of the Year, NCO of the Year, Section Chief of the Year, and currently serving as the Hawaii Army National Guard's Recruiting Retention Battalion Command Sergeant Major. So for the last 2 years, I've been here on island helping share our Guard story and put people in boots. So if you're interested, all right.
There's the cell.
Give us a phone call. Look us up, nationalguard.com/Hawaii, and we'll get you in touch with one of our recruiters.
We've had other recruiters on it. Everything.
Yeah.
All of them have actually made the pitch.
Yes, they actually did.
Good.
So.
Good. You should.
All right. Aloha, I'm Misty Park. I'm with the 201st Combat Operations Squadron. Been with the Hawaii Air National Guard since 2001. Initially, I was with the 293rd Combat Comm Squadron. Loved it there. It was the closest Air Force squadron, Air Force, I guess, equivalent of Army. We always camped out, so I loved it. Unfortunately, they disbanded, so I moved over to the 201st AOG unit. Just stood up. Loved it there. Grew with that unit. Developed a lot of relationships there, and I stuck it out there. And now I'm the one of their squadron cells, and love to watch people grow. Most of my background is in cyber, and my full-time job is also in that same area, network engineering. So always like to help people learn, grow, not just in the cyber world, but as a leader, always coming to me and others for advice. So not just learning from me, but I also learn from them. So helping me to grow as well. So.
Excellent. So you're a DSG or
I am a
IDT
DSG.
for Army guys?
I am, but currently I am on Title 10 orders, and I am working with active duty as their Air Operations Squadrons Ops Superintendent right now. So I've been doing that since October of 2022. So probably going to serve another year of that as well. So
Good experience
Yep.
for you too.
Very good. A lot of experience here at the table.
Yes.
Do you guys have a fun fact or something interesting that you've done in the past that makes you stand out?
I wouldn't say it necessarily makes me stand out. I'd probably share two things, So, having lived in Portugal, I speak Portuguese and Spanish. And since transplanting here to Hawaii, I've been trying to learn the Hawaiian language, which is very, very challenging. It's beautiful, but it's different than any other language that I've
Hey,
listened
oi.
to. How are you? Yeah.
I'm from here, and that's the extent of my Halloween language. So,
Yeah.
so thank you very much for learning. That is a neat fact.
Yeah,
that is.
well, for me, I'm a thrill seeker, so I like to do things that are crazy, like jump out of planes. But I also, I'm a foodie, so like I like to travel a lot of places and just try different things. Some of the weird things I've tasted was like pickled pig's feet, balut, things like that. So just to try it. I may not like it, but at least I can say I tried it.
That might be
Yeah.
scarier than jumping out of a
I
plane.
know, it's very risky. I don't know. I'm Filipino and I don't want to try bullet. So
All right, so I'll go ahead and ask the first question. It's a great topic that I didn't think I was that familiar with, but once I looked into it, I was like, it surrounds me a lot. So, very basic question is, what does emotional intelligence mean to you?
For me, it's just about, understanding my own emotions and then also understanding the emotions of those I work with, peers, subordinates, leaders, so that's what it is to me. Just understanding my own emotions and then understanding others' emotions and knowing how that can affect us getting to mission accomplishment. So.
Yeah, I think having a personal and social awareness, regarding your feelings and attitudes, that can directly affect, your behaviors and actions. The more that people can have that, I think the better off the team's going to be. The more cohesive we'll all work together, and be able to accomplish the mission, like Chief said.
How about you, Chief?
yeah, I think it's just being aware of sort of like what might trigger certain emotions depending on the people you're dealing with or the situation, and kind of pulling yourself back and saying, let me not react to that. But also kind of meeting people like where they're at when it comes to communication. Maybe you have to be a little softer with some, maybe you got to be a little bit more direct. So I think it's just all of the gamuts of communication is how I look at it.
Sounds to me, once I looked it up and learned it and knew it was all around, I've been doing it for my whole life. I saw how important it was as part of leadership. Now, what does it mean to you as a leader about emotional intelligence? Because you have people beneath you, you have people you're responsible for, and peers. I guess my question would be, is emotional intelligence important to have as a leader?
Definitely. I mean, particularly when I came here, everyone here is Ohana. Everyone here is family, and the relationships that we have affect the work that we produce or the work that we do, and our interactivity. Just last week, we got our entire battalion together and did a kickball tournament and had some fun. Just getting everybody together and kind of having that family environment. Some physical fitness, a lot of trash talking, a lot of good fun. But for us, we're trying to create that type of climate, that type of energy. That people want to come to work, that people want to engage in their community and in their units.
Yeah, I think it's important to, understand how to build a good team, right? Knowing what one person's strengths are, knowing what one person's weaknesses are, and how you can tap into those and build a cohesive team to be more effective, right? That kind of stuff. And then you also know like what motivates people, right? Different things motivate people of different ages or different religions or whatnot, right? So the more you understand those kind of things, the more better you can build a team and foster cohesiveness and effective management. So.
So I guess a follow-up question would be about emotional intelligence. You as leaders, you talk about being aware. Are there things or strengths or weaknesses that you feel you have that you're still working on when it comes to emotional intelligence and how you lead and communicate with your subordinates or even just your peers?
Yeah, definitely regarding emotional intelligence, I think, in my personal life at home, I definitely struggle a lot more with this, particularly with dealing with my kids. We have, 4 teenagers right now in the house, and, being aware of all of their emotions and feelings and, some of their pushback towards us as parents as we're trying to guide them, to becoming, successful adults and making that transition throughout their middle and high school years, right? At work, one of the things I try to do, not just say we have an open door policy, but actually, effectively utilize that, right? So inviting people in to sit down and talk story, actively listen to them and some of their struggles as well as their successes. Being part of a command team, I feel like we end up dealing with all the minutiae, all of the problems that people have. So we've asked our leaders out there to share with us the success stories, push up those good news things that we can, essentially hunt every day because it happens, so much in our life, whether it's in the community, in the high schools, whether it's at, the military entrance process station when a new young man or woman raises their right hand and takes the oath to join our team and to defend, the Constitution, or even, stories about the National Guard, and what we do in our communities. So we're always constantly seeking those type of things, and trying to raise it up to our awareness and, inviting somebody in to your office and having them sit down and ask them, hey, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? How's your family? I think that definitely brings us all together a lot more.
Yeah, and a good way to get to know your soldiers, right?
Yeah.
So, and their needs. Yeah, great.
Yes, I think self-awareness is crucial, right? Like your behaviors, your goals, your values all play a huge part on how how your influences your behavior. Your behaviors and your thoughts behind your making decisions are all based on, your values, your goals, how you feel that day, right? Like if you need to take time to pause, you had a bad morning, things just weren't going for you, take time to pause before you go out there and, make decisions, right, affecting other people. So yeah, self-awareness is really critical in emotional intelligence.
Well, I use the Google machine to tell me how are ways you can improve. And you guys mentioned a couple of them is taking that deep breath before you do it. And that's actually a good piece of advice across the board, but taking that breath before you react. And so that, I thought that was great. And then you talked about, you got home and work. So my next question to you guys is, do you use stuff that you learned at home? Because if you have kids or family members that you grew up with, you're practicing emotional intelligence there. And then do you take it to work, or is it the opposite? You bring some of the stuff you learned at work at home to apply?
It goes both ways, I think. It's more taking the stuff from home and applying it at work, I think, for me, because, I always put it in the mindset of, if this would happen at home, how would I treat it, right? Like I always take that in consideration because I don't want to hurt feelings. I don't want to, I want to have that right balance of discipline yet, empathy, right? So I think, yeah, it works both ways. And then at home, when you have to be a little stricter, right? You just, but there's a balance too, right? So it goes both ways, but I think I take more of that from home and bring it to work.
Yeah, I know I've talked to Chief Fox about this. Every morning after I exercise and pray, I do an exercise called priming, in which I go back historically and think of 3 past events, positive things that have happened in my life, and I try to kind of relive those experiences. And then I think of 3 other people and kind of say a prayer or thought of well-wishing and good things towards them. And oftentimes, if I feel motivated to, I'll send them a message and kind of just start it out. Hey, I just want to let you know you're on my mind this morning. I'm hoping you have a great day, a great week, or something. And then 3 things of forward thinking about 3 future experiences. And often that there's kind of a short term, mid term, and long term. But today I was excited this morning, priming, coming here and talking to you guys about emotional intelligence and really setting your day up for success like that, so that when you get to the office, your engagements are positive, they're constructive. Even if you're having to have a critical conversation with somebody, you can do that in a method that's effective, right? That really hopefully reaches out to them, lets them know your expectations, as well as why you need them to be a part of your team, why you need them to be successful. Because if everyone here is successful, then we're all successful. And I think that's something about it being an emotionally intelligent leader, right? Is really finding out what their motivations are and connecting with them and bringing out the best in everybody.
How about you, Chief?
How do I prime?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard one, because there's days you're not feeling it. So I think for me, before I get out of my car, before anybody sees me, whatever that event is, I have to straighten myself up, take some deep breaths and go, whatever was bothering me, maybe that moment, I have to put it behind me and just know that I have to put on a different face, because those people that I'm going to see and engage with, they don't need to see that, right? Because it has nothing to do with what I'm going to do here. And I don't want it to take away from, whatever that engagement or the event is. So for me, it's just being aware. Like, I'm not in the mood, but I have to be there. And I have to be here and I have to be there. And I just think about my family and I think about things that ground me and say, okay, you can do this. Even if it's just for this short period, you can do it. So we all have those dates. And so that's how I would say I prime, to get my mind right. So
I prime in a different way, but I didn't know I primed. So when she said that, I'm like, wow, I kind of do something like that. Is I'll sit in my car before I come to work and I'll go to social media and I want to watch something that make me laugh. And because traffic, it's traffic. And then just coming to work, deadlines. Sometimes you have good things to do that day. Sometimes you have bad, but I'll laugh. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm ready. And I get out. But I liked your idea about the 3 things. And then you always asking for the positive, because it's so easy to list the negative. It's unfair how easy that is. But to find out the positive in something I think that really helps.
for sure.
All right, what do I got? Okay. So how do you manage others' emotions? Because we talked about what we do for ourselves to prep. What's something you guys do to affect the people you work with, or your subordinates or peers and leaders even? Sometimes they need help. So how do you guys affect them if they need a bump?
Yeah, for myself, I try to show compassion by putting myself in their boots, right? Remembering a lot of times I forget that I'm a command sergeant major. I know we all put our pants on the same way, and I come to work kind of with that approach. I've been told I'm one of the happiest sergeants major out there, right? Being a recruiting sergeant major, you kind of have to have a smile, you have to have personality, you have to, represent the National Guard in a professional manner. And so when I'm talking to, junior enlisted soldiers or talking to other NCOs, I try to remember what it's like for them, how it was, 10, 15 years ago for myself, being out there in the field or being a recruiter, for example, having one of the hardest jobs in the Army, and how that, makes them feel with the work-life balance and early mornings, long weekends, multiple events. So for me, that relatability that I try to portray with our soldiers, I think allows me to connect with them on another level. The other thing I do is in our conversations, and I had a soldier stop by my office last week, and I could only spend 10 minutes with him, and then I had to go into a meeting with the commander, and then later that evening I called him on one of my walks with my dogs, and just wanted to reiterate to him that I think he's doing a good job. Part of him opening up to me was that this is probably the first thing that he struggled with, being a recruiter. And while you're out there trying to change a lot of lives, ultimately, you got to focus on the next one, that next applicant, that next warrior that you're helping out. And so I followed up with him that evening, gave him a call, kind of probably after hours. But I shared with him my story when I first became a recruiter, and how many hours we were putting in, and some of the struggles that I had, learning this job, and hopefully showing just that little bit of vulnerability, going back 20 years ago, and even nowadays, probably hopefully helped him out a little bit, made him realize that he's not alone, that he's got somebody here that knows where he's at, that has his back, and we're going to try to provide him the resources and the tools and the training so he can be successful, but ultimately he has it all already. And so I would just say those two things: relatability, and the second is vulnerability. If you're just able to let your guard down a little bit and open up, people know that you're human and that you'll care. And I think that's one of the biggest things a leader can do.
It's a great thing to take advantage of the time walking your dog. to call somebody who you didn't have time, a lot of time with to call. So let's talk to.
And I love that you followed back up with them, knowing that he probably needed a little bit more time with you. And the fact that you did that without him having to ask just shows that you're really well aware of what he needs and what you probably need to make it a good sync relationship. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, stole my answer, but yeah, definitely. What the command sergeant major said, relatability, right? 100%. But I think most times it's hard to relate with, a supervisor, leader, right? Like the person above you, right? And so for that, I think most times, like, hey, do you want to have a moment and talk, just heart to heart with that person, and maybe that person's going through something that, they cannot necessarily, share with the group, and it's just a one-on-one, Misty to, whoever, right? And it's like, hey, lay it all out, and then that person may feel better, maybe, hey, maybe you can give me some advice, right? In the background, without anybody knowing about it, right? So sometimes, but yeah, definitely agree. Relatability, and just being there for somebody, right, to talk. That might just help them.
Yeah, just being a good listener, right? I find that doing anything over food really relaxes the tone, and I think more people start to just talk. Yeah. Over coffee.
Sometimes they don't even know something is wrong.
Right.
But you can see it. So, but yeah, food will open it up. Good thing you're a foodie. That helps.
So
But they might not like the same foods I do.
Right. Well, that's why you have little snacks in your office. Here, let me give you a little
I do
snack.
that. I do have a lot of snacks.
So I find that helps. At least it helps me. So
Yeah, environment's definitely a big thing. If you're hungry that day, if you're tired, one of the things I was reading lately is just how much sleep impacts people, right? So if you're not rested the night before, are you really coming to work with the right energy, the right amount of level of consciousness, right? Or you're just going through the motions that day. So I do definitely think having some snacks on hand, or a conversation starter with somebody is a good idea.
It's sometimes when you're not there, you're not ready, and you put on the facade for others to help them, but you're really hurting yourself. So you almost got to take care of yourself too, because you can fake it, but then at the end of the day, you're going to be emotionally drained. So I think it is good to be vulnerable. It is that communication is key.
and hopefully you guys have your people you can seek, that sort of vector check, when you're feeling not yourself. So hopefully you guys have that too.
'Cause they're like beacons of emotional intelligence, these two, and so
Right,
they need somebody to check.
It's hard, I remember I was superintendent chief, and one of my tech sergeants, E6, said, "How are you doing today, chief?" And I was like surprised, because you're used to the ones checking in on everybody and not used to somebody actually asking you like how your day was. And I went, "Oh my gosh, what do you mean? How am I? I'm fine, I think." So it kind of made me giggle and laugh because I never really reflected, I guess, how I really was doing, because you're just going, you're grinding, and so I thought it was nice. I felt really nice. Like, she asked me how I was doing. So
I'm going to work in a pickleball analogy here. I try to get one per podcast.
Okay.
But you mentioned something like when something bad happens, you just got to kind of brush it off and move on. The recruiter, maybe he had a bad day or a bad incident with somebody, but it wasn't life-changing. He already had the skills to move on. So in pickleball, you only play to 11. And if you make a mistake while you're serving, the opponent gets no points. So you just, they'll get the side out. Now it's going to be their opportunity, but you got to shrug it off and get ready for the next one. And that's really a metaphor for life. Is something bad happens, Yep, it happened. Acknowledge it, learn from it, and then but you got to be ready to move on. And so, pickleball is emotional intelligence
Yeah.
over and over.
Okay,
In some
being
ways,
aware.
yeah, I think so.
So I guess we'll go into our next question. So, do you guys have any examples from your career where you've used emotional intelligence to your advantage? Maybe dealing with certain people, maybe you have to communicate, you know, maybe you need something, you know, maybe there's a difficult person, you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with them, but I have to ask for stuff. Have you ever had to deal with that at all?
Yes. I'm not going to say daily, but yes. So I think conflict resolution, right? Having someone just not getting along with someone, right? And taking that, empathizing with each side, right? Hearing them out, and then just like knowing what each other's perspectives were, right? And just by understanding that, you can, kind of like, hey, well, I didn't know you felt like that, and maybe just bringing that out there and just having them speak what was your issue, because at the top it's like maybe a he say she say thing, or somebody changed the whole subject of something, of what their main reason why they were arguing about, right? So having them sit in the room and be like, hey, what's your side, and then this is how I was raised, maybe, and this is like I'm not used to that, I'm usually right to the point and do whatever the case may be. Conflict resolution, empathizing, getting each other's perspective, and then it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, maybe this was silly in the beginning to begin with, right? And so that's one of the ways that I've used emotional intelligence to help in my history.
Yeah, I really like your example there, and the more that we can educate our soldiers and airmen about emotional intelligence, I think the better off our organization is going to be, because then we're fostering that command climate where everybody is contributing positively. I brought you guys a little something. So we talked about this last time, just in conversation, and I thought I'd bring you. This is a tool that I've used in previous. So it's the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. If you guys know the 5 love languages from Gary Chapman, right? Acts of service, quality time, gifts. And there's two others in there, but this one particularly talks about, kind of creating that environment in the workplace, and it has a survey in there, which I always like using surveys with people. In fact, Major Romero RXO kind of did a personality survey with the entire battalion, and it was interesting seeing everybody's different perspectives, right, where we're all coming from, but just raising that collective level of awareness for people that kind of understood different people's triggers, different their backgrounds and different stories and everything. Kind of brought us all together a little bit more. Particularly with this book, we did the surveys, and I was kind of actually surprised and somewhat inspired by the fact that out of the 5 languages of appreciation, the number one for our section chiefs, kind of our first line leaders that help manage the recruiters and that are out there, running the whole organization was acts of service. And I don't know if that's part of the Army's leadership development program or kind of our process. But it was just one of those indicators to me that we were on the right track, because, they didn't necessarily care about awards and all these things, right, that are still important because it might be, somebody's love language or a way that we could communicate and recognize that they're important to us. But for Army leaders, that, at least based off our group survey, that was the number one, was acts of service.
We're going to have to take this survey after this shift, so we can definitely
Definitely
see.
need to take the survey.
But it's a great tool, right? Because it fills in some gaps, because we might have our own perspectives on what we think we know. And like you said, let's talk about it. And you're like, oh, I thought this, I thought that. And you start coming up with these stories in your head on why something may or may not be working. And I think it's just good to have this awareness of yourself, like you being aware of the subordinates, but also like, what's your love language? I'm not sure what mine is.
My wife tells me what my love language is.
So
Well, I just thought I'd bring you guys, this gift and just thank you guys for everything that you guys are doing for the Hawaii National Guard, as chiefs, and a little something in there too, written in there for you guys to read a little bit later. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Oh,
Well, I guess we're going to wrap this up. A lot of great content. I mean, I think wish we can go longer, but so we like to always end with what advice do you have for our soldiers and airmen that are listening out there on the topic of emotional intelligence?
Okay, I'll go first. I got three. I wrote them down because it's important, right? So like, we've all talked about this throughout the conversation, but develop self-awareness, right? Taking time to understand what are your triggers, what are your emotions, and how that can affect, how you go about your day or make decisions, right? The second one I think is important to me is understanding how to manage your stress effectively. So if it's exercising, lifting weights, talking to a friend or a trusted friend or advisor, learning how to manage your stress effectively. And the last one is seek feedback, right? We may think we know everything, right? But we don't. So whether it's from your peers, your mentors, your leaders, whatnot, hey, am I doing a good job? What can I do better, right? And then same for them, right? They're looking to you. It's like, how can I do better? What, here's what motivates me. How can we change our workplace environment or processes or whatnot? So those are my things.
And those are some really great pieces of advice. I'd probably challenge, everyone that's out there listening to be proactive, in their emotional intelligence, and something that they could do is to actually write down their leadership philosophy, right? Identify, their values, what's important to them, try to capture, on paper, how they're going to communicate with others and interact, as well as placing boundaries, right, with their work, with their life, and just kind of being knowing where those limits are for themselves. I think a leadership philosophy was something one of my mentors recommended me many years ago, and it's kind of helped me think ahead about certain situations that if I were in the situation, this is how I'd react, versus being reactive to it. So the more that we can anticipate, our emotions, what we're going to go through if these type of things happened, I think the better off we would be.
How about you?
yeah, you know what? That last one is a big one. I thought preparation is big. So nothing tries to catch you off guard. Prepare for the worst. And then empathy, and just taking that step, but learning why, because I think everything in the past and how it was when we got into the military was a lot different than it is now. And so now the leaders and the young leaders who are coming up, they already know a little bit about empathy, and I think that's something that is valuable.
I like what you said with that self-awareness and seek feedback. It goes all together. It also aligns with you being being proactive. I would say my advice would be learning from all of the experiences that you have in life, even especially the ones that are challenging. I think that's just going to make you be more self-aware in how you react to certain things. But just always learning and growing, like what your emotions are doing to you, how they affect people, how they affect yourself. And so my advice would be just learning from those experiences that you have in life. So,
That's good. Thank you, Chief.
all right. So thank you to Command Sergeant Major Simpson and Chief Master Sergeant Park for your time here today on our podcast, The Chief's Nine. So mahalo for discussing the emotional intelligence and sharing your personal experience. A lot of great information. I wish we could go longer. And mahalo to my co-host Jeff always for helping me out, being my wingman. And then for Andy back there, which you can't see, it's the man behind the camera. But you probably might hear his voice. So I am Chief Fox. Thanks again for joining us on our 6th episode of the Chief's Nine podcast. Until next time, mahalo. Bonus content.
All right, so we're in the bonus content where sometimes we get some of our best nuggets of information, and we'd like to hone in on something you might have said that we ran out of time on the podcast. So I'll go first. Okay. So as a foodie, some places or foods that you recommend that you can share with our listeners out there?
Sure. So, Fuki restaurant in Prokai.
I've seen the line.
Oh
there
my
this
God,
weekend.
it's so good.
It's right across from Pro.
I giggle at the name.
Prokai Shopping Center, and then If you like Indian tadka, that is really good. I don't remember the name of it, but I know the location. It's across from Ward, and that has good like Middle Eastern food. Super delicious. And then the last one, Straits of Honolulu, for Singaporean food, and it kind of has a nightlife after a while. But they've got good food and drinks. So those are some of my places that I go to. Well, recently.
We don't
So,
endorse
kinda
any of those restaurants, but we like eating at those
Oh yeah,
restaurants.
the food is good. I'm sorry,
Chili crab
chili crab at
at the Singapore. Did they have it?
yes, I think they
Okay,
do.
we're gonna have to go there for lunch.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Yes.
Yeah, get out there,
It's pretty
try it
new.
all.
Try
So-
all the things. Yeah.
So now we're staying on the foodie topic with my question. So as a recruiter, you're on the road all the time, checking on your soldiers out there. What are some go-to food places that you like?
So I hate to admit this, but I actually don't eat out very much. My wife meal preps every Sunday, so I got these little containers. I end up putting in my bags. So unless somebody invites me out to lunch, or I decide to use that as a format to go out to lunch with somebody and talk to them over food, I don't normally eat very much outside of that. I brought some muscle milk,
Some milk.
so that was kind of my late
You like
lunch. Chief Fox
tacos?
yep.
That's how we first met. So when I got here, we did our meet and greet and we had tacos.
Yeah.
Yeah, burritos, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll ask my question. So you mentioned about being a boxer.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about that. Like you were professional.
Right.
That's a good
I don't know if I'm going to jump out of the helicopter and that trident jump thing you did. I don't think I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Who else can say they've been to Hawaii,
know,
jumped out of a
it's
helicopter
amazing.
into the ocean, right, at 40 feet?
cool.
That is cool.
So what about your skydiving
Yes.
as a hobby?
No. My active duty commander, she was like, I'm gonna do it. And I was like, I always wanted to do it. Like that was always one of the things on my bucket list, but I was afraid, right? Like, man, I don't know. So she challenged us like, hey, we're gonna have this leadership outing. And I was like, oh my God. And so I said, okay, you know what? You only live once. So I did it and I said, you know what? I'm going to buy the whole package, the recording, the video and everything, right? Because this is the first and last time I'm ever going to do it, right? So I did it and it came out awesome. It was super fun. I'm glad I did it. And I go home and I tell my 16-year-old, hey, like check this out. This is what I did today, you know? He's like, you did that at work? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I want to go. And I was like, darn it, I have to go again now. So yeah, I'm planning to do it again. But I think if you do 6 jumps, tandem, you can start jumping on your own if you want to. But it was really fun. The view was awesome. And talk about waking up, right? I didn't have coffee that morning, but I sure was awake after that.
Quite the adrenaline.
So-
Sharing your
I want to see the prime on that day,
right.
right?
No kidding.
Yeah.
What do you tell yourself? You know.
Yeah.
What about you, Jeff? Do you have any adventures that you?
I was lucky. I came out of college, couldn't find a job, and so I had an aunt that wanted to start up a sports magazine, and I'm like, I love sports. So I got to skydive. I did the glider out at the North Shore, and it was all free because I wrote an article about it. So I'm trying to find as many free things as I could, as a recent college grad, and write it to get it into the magazine. But one of my favorite things I did was just being on the sideline during a football game, because you can hear the crunches and the banter back and forth, the coaching, the stand. It's just a totally different experience, and a lot of people don't get that. So I enjoyed that part of it, and I took advantage of it being with the sports magazine. But beautiful view, one and done. I'm with you there. I did scuba diving in high school, loved it, got addicted to it, and yeah, that was just a lot of fun. So how about you, Chief? Scariest, wildest thing?
When I was 18, I was stationed at Mount Home Air Force Base, Idaho. And the first thing we all do is go to Vegas, right? So we took a little road trip, all of us, and we decided to do bungee jumping off the stratosphere. I don't even know if it's still around. And all I can remember is like seeing this pool down there going, okay, well, I guess if that's going to happen. And I did it. I wish I had recordings. I don't think back then I don't know. Maybe I have a video somewhere, maybe a VHS tape. I don't know. But I would say that was probably my most riskiest thing I've done when I was younger. But now I'm not so. I'm very risk adverse.
Well, it's risky when they don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
That's kind of a thing. So no, that's amazing.
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess that ends our bonus content.
All right.
Good stuff. Bonus content.